Hi, everybody. So, for my project today, I will be taking you through a TV pitch for an original adaptation series of Beowulf, the classic mythology story. So, basically, just an overview of the pitch plan. I'm going to have obviously the title, the log line, the format, and the audience that I want to reach with this show, the relevance that it has to me, and why I'm the person who should be telling the story, a rough overview of the pilot structure, as well as the themes I want to explore and the relevance of the show in regards to the larger world. So, logline format target audience. The logline is Beowulf, Prince of Geats, accepts an offer to hunt a horrifying monster by the name of Grendel, unwittingly embarking on a bloody and brutal journey to legendhood. And the format is going to be 40 minutes to an hour long, live action, serialized, but also limited with the option for more seasons if, people like it. The target audience that I'm looking for is 25 to 38 years old, fantasy fans, horror fans, and history enthusiasts. Anyone who's liked Game of Thrones or The Witcher will basically love this show, or the hope is that they'll love this show. As far as my personal connection to the story, I have a very deep love and appreciation for Beowulf in general. It's been a story that I'd heard about ever since high school, going all the way into college, because it was my best friend and roommate's favorite story of all time. So we talked my ear off about it constantly, and I never got around to reading it until about last year or 2 years ago, and of course I fell in love with it. I'd read other mythological literature like the Iliad and the Odyssey before, and I enjoyed them, but there was something about the world and the style and even the hero portrayal of Beowulf that was just more compelling to me. I specifically felt like Beowulf himself as a character was an interesting mix of like the typical mythical strong dude who is like, he's just so strong he can fight anyone, with also Perseus, whose like only real strength was that he was clever, and that was how he like survived. So I like that this story mixed those two archetypes together rather than just having him be like a meathead who could strangle whoever, even though Beowulf does just kind of strangle people a lot. Besides the actual story itself, though, there is a theme that Beowulf touches on a lot, but it never specifically makes it known. And that's the fact that Beowulf always has to take things on by himself. The story always mentions the help that he has when he's fighting these like horrifying monsters that like no one man alone could take on, but he always does it alone. And that feeling of fighting alone while your friends are present and watching is something that I connect with very deeply and do want to incorporate into the story. For the overview of the pilot, I want it to start in Heorot, which is the mead hall mentioned in the story of Beowulf. It's a very new installation of Denmark, where the king Hrothgar, king of Danes, is having an amazing, wonderful feast with all of his most trusted retainers and friends. So this party is raging, everyone's having a great time, they're all drunk on mead. It's like the happiest night the kingdom has seen in a long, long time. And there's only one thing that hates happiness, and it's Grendel, the horrifying troll monster. And so all this happiness enrages Grendel to the point where he shows up and absolutely dunks on these people. He murders basically everyone except for the king, the queen, and their two most trusted retainers out of all of them, Unferth and Asher. And it's an absolute bloodbath. It's horrifying. And we hard cut away from that days before to Geatland, which is a neighboring area across, I think it's a lake, some sort of, that's something I have to research. But it's a different kingdom, Geatland with the Geats, and Beowulf is there, and he is their prince, essentially. His father is the king, and he is training to be a hero, more or less. And so we go into his day-to-day, what that looks like, the sort of intense physical training that he goes through just to feel valid as a quote-unquote hero, though he hasn't done anything heroic yet, which his awful dad makes very clear to him almost daily. We go into their relationship while we're in Geatland with Beowulf. His dad has expectations that are basically as high as the stratosphere. And he's such a dick. As a former hero of the land himself, he pushes Beowulf so much farther than anyone needs to. And on top of that, we also get to see that Beowulf's friend life isn't super great either, because his best friend, at least in his mind, Brecca, will not speak to him no matter how much Brecca tries to talk to him. So he goes around, he takes contracts, he does, good stuff for the town, whatever he can to sort of boost his name and help people, though it's done with some selfish undertones. And eventually, after he's celebrated for one of his most recent acts of altruism, he finds out that his father has passed away. No! So sad. And so, at the funeral, Beowulf gets a contract from Hygelac, a retainer of the king, Hrothgar, and he ends up getting a crew together, and they sail to Denmark to kill Grendel and begin Beowulf's rise to becoming a hero. So they get there, Geats meet the Danes, that's a whole thing, and we'll probably take this time to explore the side characters of Brecca, Asher, and Unferth. And once that's all done, they're all settled, Grendel shows up. And of course, Beowulf defeats him, and there's a huge celebration. Everyone loves Beowulf. Go Beowulf, yay. But after the celebration is over, Grendel's mother shows up and basically kills everybody except for Beowulf, Brecca, Asher, and Unferth. Not good. Boo. And then the themes that I want to get into with the show, at least the big three. Firstly is responsibility. A lot of mythological stories already have responsibility as the main overarching theme, or one of them, but it's always in regards to the responsibility that the hero has to take on these ridiculous tasks for their country and their kinmen or whatever. But I want to kind of move away from that and more so focus on the feeling of responsibility, specifically in regards to failure and how a hero of Beowulf's caliber handles failure in everything he does, especially as someone who has grown up with far too many expectations to be incredible. And one of the ways I want to explore that, for example, the defeat of Grendel is treated like a victory in the classic story. I really, really, really want every single success that Beowulf sees in this story to really be a drastic fuck up. The people in the kingdom of Denmark are not pleased with his success against Grendel because all of their best warriors are subsequently murdered the following night by a different, more horrible monster. And they put that on Beowulf despite them bringing him to Denmark in the first. That leads sort of into the second theme, and I might have already touched on it briefly, of familial expectations and the burden of that. So I've touched on Beowulf's father and his insane expectations already, but what does that look like in Beowulf's mind? How does he see his successes? How does he feel about his failures? And outside of his biological family, how does he feel about the expectations of his men, of the people that are on his team, of Brecca and Asher and Unferth, these people who, while he may not be related to them, are his brothers and sisters in battle and war, and the toll that can take on a leader, especially when he doesn't feel like one. And after that, the last one, mortality and legacy. Again, this kind of legacy feeds back into the previous two themes. The stress to make a name for yourself, the deep-seated want to be remembered, especially with the knowledge that you will die, and especially for Beowulf, where death is something that is constantly around him, that surrounds him, basically breathes it on the daily, and the stress that can create for someone, especially someone, again, who is obsessed with being remembered. And then for relevancy, why it's relevant now, I think that Beowulf is culturally more relevant than it's ever been. Viking and middle-aged stories like this one are bleeding more and more into mainstream content every day, especially considering the rise in shows like Vikings and The Witcher, games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and movies like Jill Cohen's Macbeth remake and also The Green Knight, and many, many others. And outside the cultural relevance of Viking stuff, even as a classical Anglo-Saxon epic, Beowulf still has a very, very large fan base. It's regarded as Britain's national epic and also has been lovingly celebrated as a national text in many Nordic countries. And that's all that I have. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.